Welcome back to 40 Days of Lent with the Screwtape letters. If you were wondering what happened to the other narrator, well, she's taken a break. Don't worry, Screwtape hasn't gotten her. We just want to give things a little change of tone. Now, today's chapter might be the most deceptively lighthearted one in the entire book. It's about laughter. But don't let that fool you, because by the end of it, Screwtape will have made one of the most devastating observations on the dangers of insincere humor. As always, let's begin with a prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world for the ruin of souls. Amen. Now, over to chapter 11. Screwtape opens in a good mood because the patient's new social circle, those sophisticated worldly friends from the last chapter, are proving very useful. But he wants to make sure Wormwood understands exactly why. Specifically, he wants to educate Wormwood that even though they are people of great laughter, he has to distinguish which kind of laughter is conducive to sin and which one is not. They aren't all the same, you see. Screwtape distinguishes 4 kinds of laughter: those of joy, fun, jokes, and what he calls flippancy, which means a lack of respect or seriousness. Let's start with joy. Joy is the laughter of friends reunited, of people simply happy to be alive and together. It doesn't need much of a reason. Even the smallest witticism can set it off, because the laughter isn't really about the joke. It's an overflow of something deeper, which is genuine love and friendship. Screwtape finds it utterly useless for his cause, and actually disgusting. The next kind of laughter comes from fun, and Screwtape doesn't like it either, because it denotes a playful instinct, a delight of games and silliness. It's too conducive to happiness, and as we saw in a previous episode, happy people keep away from lonesome sins. So again, with quite a bit of irritation, Screwtape doesn't like fun. He says that fun tends to promote friendship, courage, and contentment, and those are 3 things he would never want to see in hell. Now, over to the joke. A joke is more promising in specific situations, particularly when it can dissolve shame. If something embarrassing can be reframed as a punchline, the embarrassment disappears. If cruelty can be passed off as a practical joke, the cruelty gets a free pass. Screwtape says, mere cowardice is shameful. Cowardice boasted of with humorous exaggerations and grotesque gestures can be passed off as funny. Cruelty is shameful unless the cruel man can represent it as a practical joke. And he says the same thing about sexual dirty jokes. If someone exposes the dirty thoughts in his mind in a direct way, everyone will think he's a pervert. But if he frames it as a joke, it passes, and he even comes off as a rather funny and likable guy, all the while consumed on the inside with perversity that cannot but burst out in the open. We've all seen this, and sadly, we may have done it ourselves. The cutting remark dismissed as just banter. The person whose genuine concern is met with, "Can't you take a joke?" etc. Humor in these cases isn't bringing people together. It's providing cover for one's own insufficiencies and therefore acts as a solvent that dissolves moral seriousness. But even the joke, properly speaking, requires some intelligence to deploy, which brings Screwtape to his favorite, his most reliable weapon, flippancy. Screwtape says, flippancy is the best of all. In the first place, it is very economical. Only a clever human can make a real joke about virtue, or indeed about anything else. Any of them can be trained to talk as if virtue were funny. You don't need to actually make a good joke. You just need to talk as if the serious thing were already ridiculous. Among flippant people, The joke is always assumed to have been made, even though no one actually made it. And the long-term effect is what Screwtape almost gleeful. He says, if prolonged, the habit of flippancy builds up around a man the finest armor plating against the enemy I know. It is 1,000 miles from joy. It deadens instead of sharpening the intellect, and it excites no affection between those who practice it. This is the portrait of a very recognizable modern type of person. The person for whom nothing is quite serious, nothing quite sacred, everything approached with a layer of ironic distance. It's the reflexive eye roll at sincerity, the social cost of caring openly about anything. To mean what you say is to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable is to be uncool. And so flippancy becomes armor. But armor against what? Against God, Screwtape says. Against the very things that make life worth living. You cannot be genuinely moved by beauty if you've trained yourself to find everything slightly absurd. You cannot pray with your whole heart if half of you is smirking at the other half. And this connects directly to what we discussed yesterday, the patient performing cynical attitudes until they become his own. Flippancy is one of the primary ways that transformation happens. You adopt the tone to fit in, and gradually, without any single dramatic decision, the tone becomes your default. The armor becomes your skin. Therefore, for today, our Lenten resolution is simple and small, but not easy. This week, allow yourself to take one thing seriously, out loud, in the company of your friends or colleagues. Something that your social environment would normally greet with irony or a dismissive laugh. It might be something about your faith. It might be a straightforward expression of gratitude or admiration. It simply might be not laughing at a joke that diminishes someone else. And you don't need to make a moralizing speech about it. Just don't put the armor on. Make a comment about how that's not really funny, or you can turn it into a question. What makes you think that's funny? You may be surprised at how quickly you stop Screwtape's plans, the devil's plans, right in their tracks by directing the minds of those around you away from stupidity and jargon and on to the truth. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode of 40 Days of Lent with the Screwtape Letters.